Hello and welcome to another episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy, and we have a returning guest. I need to get the bwah, 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 bwah sound effect for this. I'm excited to have him here. I would say he in the pantheon of guests, I can definitively say is the number one Liberty fan among all of our guests, number one Liberty University fan. Takes his kids to the games, always having a good time, a great family man. Excited to have another conversation with him. Brandon Osterbind of Osterbind Law. Brandon, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Charlie. And now that I hear you say that, I can bet you I'm the only person you know that you can say that about.
Oh yeah. I've racked my brain a couple of times because I was thinking about, okay, Brandon's coming back on the show. Like, what's the fact about him? I was like, well, I don't know that there's anyone else who's going to compete with him on the Liberty University front. So that's going to be the tag for Brandon. That's okay. That's okay.
And if you were paying attention this past weekend, there was Liberty played ECU at home, and there was a 4 hour and 4 minute weather delay that was devastating. I took my girls home because they couldn't take it. After about 2 hours of waiting. And so that was kind of a long time. And then my youngest son is really a morning person. He's not a night person. Yeah. And he wanted to stay. I tried to convince him to go home and go to bed. And he said, no, I want to stay. But when I got back, he was like, yeah, no, I made a mistake. So I turned around and drove home again. It's about a 45-minute down and back, and got soaked twice. In the process of taking them out, and we came back. My oldest son and I stayed for the whole thing, and the game ended at 2 a.m. I think we got home around 2:30 in the morning. Went to bed about 3, and got up, and I was at church by 9 on Sunday morning.
Good God bless, my man. Well done. That's commitment. It's commitment to showing up at the Lord's house.
There you go.
All right, Brandon. What's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
They don't teach you that success is not an event, it's a habit.
Ooh, I mean, you're just like, you're pitching right down the middle on that one. You know how much I love that.
I thought you would. I thought I'd go deep on this one and just stick it out there and see how the conversation goes.
Okay, I'm really curious. So that statement, success is an event, success is a habit, not an event, or not an event, it is a habit. Whichever way you want to parse the language together. For you, I'm curious. That's got to be like a lesson learned type of thing. So in your own life, where does that wisdom come from?
So I'll tell you where I first encountered this concept, and you know it well. Is Mike Michalowicz's book, Profit First, where he says profit is not an event, it's a habit. And the idea is, most people look at their law firm finances, their business finances at the end of the year, and they say, what's left? Let's divvy that money up. That's an event. If we had a profit, it's because it's at the end of the year, it's a big thing. Let's figure out who gets what. But the whole challenge to that concept in the book is that profit is not an event. It's a habit. It's something that you build into your cycles, right? Your rhythm of financial responsibility. So, the idea is you're constantly putting money into your profit account. You determine what your profit is. You have power and you have control over what that number is and what it looks like, instead of just looking up 12 months later and saying, I hope there's something left. And I think I've really been challenging myself to take that concept from the financial responsibility, financial discipline that I think I do pretty well, and apply it to other areas of my life. Because I think we can look at a lot of things and we can say that event was incredible, that was awesome, that was a success. Yeah. But if we look at life like that, we're going from, one mountaintop to a valley, to a mountaintop, to a valley, to a mountaintop, to a valley, instead of just constantly looking at the little things in our lives that we can look at as a success. And then, the whole concept of a habit, James Clear, Atomic
Yeah.
Habits.
Yep.
His book, Atomic Habits, is, it's 1% better every day. And that growth compounds over time. So what habits are you building in your life ultimately to build success? And then I'll throw one more book on top of that. I recently read this summer the book Outlive, and it kind of changed my thought process on even like exercise and nutrition and things of that nature, because the goal is not to hit a desired weight on the scale, or the goal is not to hit a desired 1 rep max or whatever it may be in the gym. All those things are kind of good. They're kind of cool. It's fun to do them, but those are events. But success, when you're talking about longevity, like it's an accumulation of habits over time, not just one 1 rep max, whatever it may be.
You're someone that I very much associate with that financial habit, which a lot of folks have. We talk all the time about the marketing, operations, finance triangle and how that influences the growth of your firm. And I find that most people have one of those aspects that they naturally have a habit for, or we could call it discipline as well. A lot of folks I work with have an operational habit, like they're happy to do the legal work day after day after day. You're one of the few who I find has the financial habit. Where does that come from?
It comes ultimately from my experience with Dave Ramsey. I remember my wife and I are both attorneys. We were both owners and partners in our law firm.
Shout out Kelly. She's awesome.
Yeah, shout out to Kelly. She is the brains and heart behind the whole thing. She just like shoves me out in front and says, "Go do that," and I, of course, listen. But again, like this part of the story is her brains as well. But we're two young attorneys. We both had good jobs. We're making good money. Double income, no kids. They call them dinks, right?
Yes.
And we thought that we were on top of the world. Weren't really saving for anything, not saving for retirement. We were traveling, doing fun things, and we started having kids. And I was in charge of our finances. I was paying the bills and the credit card bills and statements and things like that. And then when Kelly stepped away from being a prosecutor after our second kid was born, she started looking at that stuff, and she's like, "This is a mess. You're doing a terrible job at this." So I've not always been financially responsible or even good at this thing. So we found ourselves in a significant amount of debt. Most of it was student loan debt from law school.
Yeah.
But some of it was what Dave calls a stupid tax, like borrowing money to buy furniture or a car, or just things that you don't need. They're not necessary. You can buy a cheaper car. You can get by with less furniture or less fancy furniture. All of those things, you don't have to go into debt to buy them. Or if you want them, save up for them and pay cash. So we found ourselves in a significant amount of debt, like I said, most of which was law school and undergrad. Most of it was mine too. So we went through the whole Dave Ramsey process of paying that stuff off, and we paid off, and I think in about 3.5 years, $120 some odd thousand worth of debt. And it was really on my income. Kelly was staying home at that point with our young children, and I was working at a law firm doing kind of a general practice at that point in my life. But I took to heart what Dave says, "Where do you go when you're broke? To work." So I did that. I did a lot of that, and we pushed through, and we did the whole debt snowball, and we started paying off the smallest debt, and then we were paying on the smallest debt, put it to the next debt, and then all the way up until that student loan, which was broken down into a bunch of smaller loans. So we kind of did the same thing with that until it was all gone. And then that was 2016 when we cleared all of that. And just so happens in 2017, that's when we decided to open up our law firm.
There you go.
And to go into business together and to be partners in this joint venture in life and in law. And we're not very good at the whole financial thing. So like,
look, I've seen inside the financials of a lot of firms, and I've repeated this to you many times.
Yeah.
You are better than most.
Not back then. Now we've come a long way, but back then it was always a scramble, trying to find money to pay payroll, not knowing when to take money out of the firm. That was one of my biggest struggles. Was okay, I keep hearing that this is a business and the business should serve me, and so I'm going to take this money, I'm going to do something fun. But then 2 months later, we can't make payroll, and that was this crazy cycle of not knowing how to keep the money separate, or when to keep the money separate, when we should put money back in the firm to grow and invest in future stuff, or when to pull money out and do something fun, or something unnecessary, but that we wanted. Like we bought a new house in 2018, right? Like that's,
there you go.
Didn't have to do that. But I pulled a lot of money out of the firm to do that. And then later on, we're like, I probably should have done that. The money, because we could have used that money now to pay people and to grow. So we've had these kind of like you start and stops, because of that kind of financial instability. And then I remember in 2019, this is usually how most of my great ideas happen. Kelly says, read a book, read this book. You should read this book. Like, okay, I'll go read that book. Cause Kelly's a reader, Kelly is just a crazy reader. She reads anything she can get her hands on. She reads like 100 books a year. And I don't know how she does it. And she tracks it.
It's impressive.
It just kind of blows my mind how much she can consume in that amount of time. So she hands me the Profit First book, and it took me probably 6 months to open it. I was like, okay, yeah, sounds good. So I finally opened it and read it, and my gosh, he was speaking right to me, like just like slapping me in the face with every page. And I'm like, this is me. And it felt like that Dave Ramsey experience I had in 2014. Just kind of like circle back. We were driving down, we were going on an anniversary trip to Charleston, South Carolina, just for, I don't know if it was for a long weekend or a week or something like that. And Kelly said, hey, you want to listen to this Dave Ramsey podcast? And back then, like I wasn't a podcast listener. I didn't even know what podcasts were. I think I actually said, what's a podcast? And here we are.
Awesome.
Here we are.
It was the early days of it, truly.
On one. It really was. So we had this fancy new car that I thought that we needed because we had 2 kids now. You need it.
That's
you need
right.
a new car if you have 2 kids, right? So it had the Bluetooth capability. So we put the podcast in the speakers and we're listening. And I heard this couple do what they call a debt-free scream on Dave Ramsey's podcast. And I looked at Kelly and said, we need to do that. That's slapping me in the face. So that started that journey. And then Mike Michalowicz's book, Profit First, just kind of slapped me in the face again. And really, I mean, it solved a lot of my problems, because the biggest problem is, when in the world am I supposed to enjoy any of the benefits of being this business owner? Right. So when I read Profit First in the whole system of how it works, it just makes sense. And it gives you permission to do the thing that you want to do, which is pull money out and do something fun with it. So the profit account, you just accumulate a percentage of your revenue into an account, and every quarter you write a check to yourself, and then you take it and you do something fun with it. Now it's different from your owner's compensation, your salary, but but that just kind of gives you permission to say, okay, I've got $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 sitting in this profit account. I can kind of do whatever I want with that. I can save it. I can go and I can buy a new car. I can go on a big trip, whatever it may be. That's what it's there for. And that's creates the permission for me to say, you can go and do this. But the habit of putting money into that profit account is something that I had been lacking. The habit of thinking, this is profit, this is profit, this is profit. I can't touch it. I can't touch it. I can't touch it. that was completely a foreign concept to me. So that's the long story of how I've gotten to where I am today, where you see me and you can see my numbers and you can say, wow, Brandon, you're pretty financially disciplined, but it wasn't always that way.
Right.
And it's years and years and years of doing it that has gotten it that way.
Okay, so getting back to the idea of success as a habit, not an event, then obviously this wasn't one time you went in, you're like, I read Profit First, I'm going to go ahead and set up the, multiple accounts and I'm going to go ahead and deposit money. You started staying the course with it. How hard was it to stay the course? And in the hard moments, how did you bring yourself back to holding that center?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were months where I would have to take money out of other accounts to pay payroll, but
Mm.
it wasn't because I was being irresponsible. We started, like I said, in 2019. Well, COVID happened the next year.
Sure
So
did.
that punched everybody in the face. So there were certainly times when it was good times and when it was bad times. But every time, even if I had to have to transfer money from a profit account or a tax account or an emergency fund account or something like that into the operating account, it was always the next dollar that I made goes into the income account, and on the 10th and the 25th of the month, I'm transferring a predetermined percentage into the profit account. And then if I had to, make adjustments later on because there wasn't enough money in the operating account, then I would do it. The other thing that helps with is, like, you see the money in your operating account and you think, okay, well, I can only spend this amount of money.
Right.
If that pot is a lot bigger because it's all going into one place, then you think I can spend that amount of money, and that amount is a lot more. And then by the end of the day, you just don't have any profit left. So when I started seeing the benefit of it, the large chunks of cash I could take home, and then sometimes there was very small chunks of cash that I would take home,
Yeah.
and then sometimes they're very large ones. It just depends on how we did that quarter. But when I started seeing the net effect of it at the end of the day, not just at the firm, but at home, with a wife who's happy and
Yeah.
kids I can provide for and give once in a lifetime experiences. Like I didn't bat an eye when Liberty made it into a New Year's Six Bowl this year, and they were going to Phoenix. We had, I don't know, a week and a half. And yeah, I just booked the flights. I got the Airbnb and I rented a car
Oh,
and
yeah.
we went. Like there was no question. It was a once in a lifetime trip. We had the money. We're going. So that's the sort of thing like that. It just creates that freedom. And I put a single thing on a credit card. I don't even have a credit card. I haven't had a credit card in a decade.
Wow.
And I do just fine without them. We don't borrow money for Christmas. We don't, there's always money. I always say, even when I don't know how, the Lord always provides. And all those times when I need resources, it just seems to show up, somehow. So
I'm curious about that credit card thing. Let me ask you. So I buy things on the credit card, but it's literally, I pay it off every single week. So it's effectively like a cash purchase, but I'm getting a little bit of cash back or whatever it might be. Is there any factor of you worry about what if you had the credit card?
yeah. So I mishandled them before.
Okay.
I was not a responsible credit card user before, like 99% of credit card users, right? Like
Yep.
most, and there's studies that show this, most people carry a balance. And, I've led Financial Peace University classes, Dave Ramsey's class at my church for years. I haven't done it in the last couple of years because our lives are too busy to lead one more thing.
Yeah.
But I've probably done 10 or 15 of them over the course of 9. It's a 9-week class, and we would do 2 or 3, sometimes 4 in a year. And I'd have people come up to me all the time and say, exactly what you just said. I pay off my credit card every month. Why shouldn't I use it? And my response is, if you in fact pay off your credit card every month, which the studies show that most people do not, then I do what works best for you. But I know for myself that if you play with snakes long enough, you're going to get bit. So my aversion to credit cards comes from my experience. And once you're late once or twice, you've already wiped out whatever cash benefit that credit card might afford you. So at that point, you're really not getting much of anything if you do pay interest on that versus paying it off. So like most people are not that financially disciplined, right? So for most people
Yeah.
using a credit card, I don't care how many miles you get or how many cash back you get. At the end of the day, you're paying for it. Ain't nothing free in this life.
It's a fair, yeah, I agree with that. So I learned my lesson coming out of college. I had, fortunately, only a very modest amount of credit card debt coming out of college. And the first thing that I did was I wiped that clear. I didn't have any stuff behind it except some weird fear of credit card debt of any kind. Like I haven't held a balance on a credit card to pay interest in 14 years now because it just automatically gets paid because it is kind of a habit. Like literally, because I check in with my banking regularly, and anytime that I open it, if I see an amount on the credit card, it could be $23.97. Because I'm there, I pay it just very, very simply. Because I can't stand the idea of an interest payment like that. That hurts me. It's actually why our most recent vehicle we purchased entirely in cash. Didn't want to have the previous one we had purchased with 50% down. And I dislike it. I dislike it to this day. The fact that we did that.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily great rationalization for it, honestly, other than that's what you're told to do. Now, the other part of the bigger one is like the whole mortgage thing. You mentioned, buying the house. I know your family's grown and you've grown into it. Is that a decision that when you look back on it, would you have really made a different choice, or are you happy with how that turned out?
I love our house. We love our location. We've got awesome neighbors. Like we live on a cul-de-sac. There's a creek in the backyard. Like it doesn't get much better than where we are. And the people that are around our cul-de-sac are incredible. Like it's not unusual to see about 13 or 14 kids running around four front yards in the cul-de-sac, riding bikes, and then 8, adults just kind of standing outside, 8 to 10 adults standing outside, talking and hanging out. So like that I don't know that you can put a price tag on that. So looking back, it's hard to say I would have made a different decision. Of course, we did take out a mortgage on our house, right? So Dave talks about his guidelines for mortgages, and we followed that. It's a 15-year fixed mortgage, and we put a lot of money down. That's where we took the money out of the firm and put a lot of money down. And our house is now 50% increase in value since then. So it's been a net positive for us, and I don't think that we would make a different decision. But on the flip side, I haven't borrowed money for a car since 2013, right? Since we started the path of not borrowing money for anything, we've just paid cash for a couple of cars. And we still have that car that I bought in 2013, although now we're kind of in a position and we're looking to replace that one.
Okay, there's the reason I brought up the house question. I'm kind of glad that you mentioned the car thing, right? You're talking about having a car for 11 plus years. Not super common, especially among high earners, people who, bring home as much money or even frankly less money than you're capable of bringing home, often cycling that out. What I note is, so you buy the house, but you do not seem to stand atop the hedonic treadmill. You are not consistently looking for the next high on what you're doing. For the folks out there, and I bring it up because in personal injury law or the law firm ownership, that's a common issue, the hedonic treadmill. Why do you think and maybe it's actually a very difficult internal battle, but what do you do to handle the natural, almost gravitational pull for human beings to be on the hedonic treadmill?
Well, I'll preface that with whenever I lead a Financial Peace University class and I introduce myself, I always raise my hand and say, "Hi, my name is Brandon, and I like nice things." Right?
I feel like we should pan to your shoe collection for just a moment here, Brandon.
Yes. You know me too well. You know me too well. I love a custom suit. I love a new iPhone, a new iPad. I'm seriously looking at the Remarkable Pro that just came out. I do like nice things, and but when it comes to cars, and I have a really nice house, right? And I've got a really nice garage gym. I've got thousands of dollars tied up in exercise equipment in my home, but I also pay for a gym to go to because I like to do that as well. So there are a lot of things that I do that I love to do. I take trips. There's a lot of fun experiences that we like to do. We like to spend a lot of time on the lake. So I bought a boat but I paid cash for all of that stuff. So I'll just say there is a bit of that in my life where we do like to do those things, but then there are certain things in life that I don't necessarily view as important, right? So cars are one of them. I do like nice cars. I look at nice cars on my phone if I'm just sitting on the couch and I've got nothing to do. I'll pull out my phone and I'll look through a Auto Trader or some app that has nice cars. I would love to have a new Suburban. I got 4 kids, so it takes a lot of space to tote them around. But my 2013 Suburban does just fine, right? So I can't.
And don't you kind of resent it for doing so fine?
I do. And I bought that one new, or not new, used. I bought that one used for cash. It's a good car. So I don't really know what the answer is to that. There are just certain things in life that I'll go do and not really think twice. And then there are other things in life that I'm like, eh. And my kids are young, so it's hard to keep a car clean. It's another reason why I haven't bought new couches for our living room. It's just going to get destroyed. So let's wait till they get a little bit older before we start throwing money after those nice things.
Yeah, look, I'm in the same camp as you. There are things, and I actually just recently pulled the trigger on a luxury purchase for myself. I love photography. I mean, I love my hobbies, and photography is among them. I've been using the exact same camera equipment for 12 years now, minus spending a few $100 here and there to grab another lens for the camera body. And I finally decided to upgrade my camera situation, and it was a not small sum of money to do so. And I bought this camera used, and it was still a $4,000 camera, just a camera, right? And we already have cameras attached to our phones that are pretty darn good, but I love photography so much. And same thing. It was, okay, is the cash available for this? Mm-hmm. Now I'm curious. For a lot of folks who hear this, these type of folks may have already turned off this particular episode because they're shouting at it going, debt is a leverageable thing. You can use debt. You have to know how to master debt in order to achieve great financial outcomes. I know you have heard that before. I'm curious, when you're talking with that individual, what angle do you come at? What do you share with them, or even what's your counter to that?
Yeah, so I don't, I struggle with that because I can see it. One of the things law school does teach you is to see both sides of the coin, right? And a lot of times, when Kelly and I have to make a major decision, and one of us is positioning for one or the other, and Kelly will say something to the effect of, "Well, do you want me to talk you into it, or do you want me to talk you out of it? Because I can do both." So I get it. I get it. But I every time I think about using debt to grow my firm, or using debt to leverage or to build wealth in some way, I just think, life can be a lot simpler and you can still grow significant wealth by doing it the simple way. And to me, I only have so much mental space and energy. And I know myself, and I know how I interact with money. And
Yeah.
to me, cash is king. And if you have, you could have, $4 million worth of stuff, and you could be leveraged to $3 million of it, and you still only have $1 million net worth. And I can
Yeah.
have $1 million net worth, and we're the same. You may have more stuff to manage, to work on, but we're the same. So, that from that perspective, I try not to look at someone else and say, I wish I had that, or I wish I could do that. Because that's, what's the saying,
Comparison is the thief of joy.
comparison is the thief of joy, right? Like I just think, my life is my life. I get to live it once. I get to live it to the glory of God, not to my own glory. And to do that, I'm going to do things the way I feel called to do them. And this is something that I'm convicted for me and my family is the right way to grow. So I'm not saying that the other way is wrong. I'm just saying that there is another simpler way of doing the same thing that doesn't require as much stress. Because if the world blows up and you can't make those payments, one thing is true: the banks are going to come after you, and they're going to take your stuff. And if you had $1 million worth of net worth, maybe you don't now when the economy goes that way. So I just, I guess I'm more conservative when it comes to financials in that respect. But at the same time, I feel like it's worked for us. Like I said, the Lord provides every time we need something, every time we find ourselves needing to do something or go somewhere or pay for something, or, put, braces on a kid's teeth, or, whatever it may be, or pay a medical bill, or whatever it is, like that. All that stuff is just there. And we don't typically worry about it because we know that life is pretty simple for us. And if everything blows up in the economy and with the insurance industry, or whatever it may be, we're gonna be okay. We're not going to stress over it.
I mean, what you have is, it's interesting. It's what a lot of people would call the very definition of financial independence, which you described the trip out, to Arizona. It's very much a financial independence type of trip. It's I'm not going to think twice. Now, I'm not staying in, say, a $3,000 a night mansion while I'm out there, because that is not what is necessary to meet the intended outcome of this stay out there. We're there to go see Liberty, right? We're there to cheer on the team. But I mean, I also saw photos from where you stayed. You stayed in a nice place. It's not like you decided to go grab a Motel 6 room because you had to pinch pennies on it either.
Right.
And that's a really exciting place to be. There's, I know that one of the other points of difficulty, we mentioned the hedonic treadmill earlier. The other thing for PI firms is the cash flow difficulty. It is, and it drives the hedonic treadmill. Sometimes it's the very motor that causes it to run of, boom, we just brought in $300,000 in fees, or boom, we just brought in $1 million in fees on a case. And I mean, you just see diamonds in the eyes. You see dollar signs exploding out the ears at that point. And it's very hard to control or to develop a measured approach to handling that income. How do you try and keep track of that so that way that money is not an event, it's part of your habits?
Yeah, I mean, I see a $1 million fee and I see a lake house, right? Like that's just boom right there in front of me. But at the same time, like I know how difficult it is to bring in a certain amount of money every single month, particularly in a PI contingency fee practice, because sometimes some cases that you think are going to resolve in this quarter, they just don't, and they end up going to trial, or you've got a trial that quarter. You think there's there's no way this case doesn't disperse in this quarter, and then all of a sudden you get a continuance from the other side you have no control over, and
Right.
which really well how much that has affected us, particularly post-COVID when things kept getting continued, how difficult it was to plan for income. So to me, even just having that recent experience of post-COVID continuances, even like a year, 2 years post-COVID, cases were in Lynchburg were still getting continued for reasons that were tangentially related to COVID, like the criminal backlog and speedy trial issues and things like that were still kind of going on because of the COVID delays. So, just having those experiences, I think, helped me to say, okay, let's look long term. There's a good amount of security and a cash emergency fund, right? Just sitting on a load of cash. You could be smart with that. You could put it in an interest-bearing account that has, minimal risk. You can get 4 or 6% some places, right? And that on a lot of money, that's not a bad thing. Or you can take that money, you can put it into something that's a little bit more risky if you're going to hold it long term. But there are ways to make money on that without necessarily just spending it and then keeping it somewhat liquid, which is what I think I would do if there were $1 million fee, right? I would still apply my profit first percentages, and I would say, okay, well, 10% goes to profit, 10% goes to owner's comp, 10% goes to the emergency fund, 10% goes to the tax fund. I might up the tax fund if that were the case, right?
Just in case.
Just a little bit. But so I would still do the exact same thing and look at it and say, okay, there's $1 million right there. 60% goes to operating. I'm going to put $600,000 in my operating account. And then that gives me permission to go out there and say, what do I need to do to reach the next level in my business? Do I double down on some marketing? Do I try to go from 7 cases a month to 15 cases a month? And if I go to 15 cases a month, well, now I need to talk about adding staff, but I have the money to add the staff to do that. So I think the vision for me would be, okay, what does it look like growth wise for my firm to say I have this amount of money to just grow. Like if you just drop $600,000 in my operating account right now, I have 17 ideas on different ways to grow my firm. And then at the end of the day, Dave Ramsey says your best wealth building tool is your income, right? So it's producing the revenue to pay those bills. But in the personal injury world, it takes 18 to 20 months or so before you start to see any of that revenue. So if I start spending money on advertising right now, then I got to start spending money on operations. It's 18 months after I spent that first dollar before I start to see any benefit from that. So it's a long game for me. It's a habit. It's not a event. It's not just an annual boom. There's $600,000 there. I'm going to go and buy a lake house. That's an event. That's looking at profit as an event. That's looking at success as an event. But if you look at it as a habit, and then you have accountability. I've got the privilege and pleasure to work with my spouse who keeps me humble and accountable to a lot of things. And a lot of people don't have that. We've got we run EOS traction in our firm. So there are 2 other people, one other attorney and one non-attorney that's on our leadership team. And I'm accountable to them as well. And when I think about this a lot, like there are 11 different households that our firm supports. And it's my responsibility to make sure that each one of those folks can take home a paycheck every single month, right? And that's not a light responsibility. I view it as a pretty heavy responsibility. So when I look at windfalls like that, I think this is security for the next few months, or I think this is opportunity for growth. We've got a little bit of margin here. Let's do the next thing that's going to take us to the next level.
That is a beautifully closed loop on the success versus habit dichotomy right there, Brandon. I appreciate all that so much. So if people want to connect with you online, learn more about the firm, where do we send them?
Osterbind Law. That's OSTERBINDLAW.com. You can send me a message through our website. Of course, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter. Mostly I'm on Twitter for Liberty football and Commanders football. We didn't mention that. I'm a big Commanders fan too. I'm on Twitter mostly for the football information. But I'm there, Injury Lawyer ESQ at Injury Lawyer ESQ. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, although I'm not on as much as I probably should be. But I welcome.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we sure will. We sure will. But I'm on all of those, so feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat.
Awesome. All right, Brandon, what are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
I'm reading the book of Ecclesiastes, which is awesome. Kind of heavy. But, like I said, there's two sides to every coin. So when you look at the toil and labor side of the coin, there's also the eternity side of the coin. So I think you have to read the book of Ecclesiastes with that in mind. I'm also teaching through the book of Ecclesiastes in my life group at church. So there's a big reason why I'm spending a lot of time in that.
That's cool.
What am I listening to? Well, I listen to your podcast. I listen to podcasts about football. There's a Liberty Flames podcast that I listen to.
Nice.
There is a it's excellent. You would enjoy it. They're funny. I'll send it to you. And
is this also the radio show that your son Will was on?
No, that's different.
Okay.
That's different.
That was cool.
But yeah, they do the radio show actually about 3 doors down from my office at a Mellow Mushroom right here, because my office is about 5 minutes away from Liberty. So nice. This semester, my girls are doing dance, and they have like 3 hours of like nonstop dance on Tuesday nights. So Kelly's like, the boys are yours. You got to feed them. You got to do all the stuff. Yada, yada, yada. So I'm like, well, Tuesday night, we're free. The coach's show is on the radio every Tuesday night. So let's go do that every Tuesday night.
Awesome.
So it's been a lot of fun.
That's so cool.
So I listen to the Flame Central podcast, which is really cool. And I listen to the Beltway Football podcast with JP Finley and Mitch Tischler. I listen to those guys a lot. I really appreciate their knowledge and understanding of football, and particularly the Commanders in history. They've been fans for a long time and reporters for a long time. So I just like to hear them talk about it. And what am I watching? I don't watch a whole lot. I'll pull something up on Netflix here and there if I'm bored. I enjoy things. I enjoy the older things like TV series like Friday Night Lights or 24, like early 2000s sort of thing. Yeah. When I was in law school, I was undergrad in law school, I was addicted to 24. Like that was my thing. But back then, like you couldn't binge watch any of that stuff. So
that's right.
And I remember when I was in law school, I said, I'm going to have one thing that I can watch each week. And it was 24. So I think it was every Monday night back then. I'd go over to my buddy's house on 9 o'clock or so at night when it would come on. We would watch an hour of 24, and then you go back to law school, go back to studying.
You had your sweet momentary reprieve, and then life intrudes once again. Very nice. So going back to the classics, the type of stuff that you can watch without having to really watch it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that.
Just kind of mindless stuff. But I watch a lot of football too. So like right now, like this is a perfect time to watch football. So it doesn't really matter what team it is. My 11-year-old son Will, I mean, he'll be watching anything if he has a relationship with the team or not. If it's football, it's on. Same with basketball. When basketball season's 54 days away from us, so I'm pretty.
It was precise.
Something like that. I saw it on Twitter.
Yeah, something like that. Of course. Very nice.
But same with basketball. We'll watch any basketball game that we can watch, and we go to all the Liberty games, basketball, football, whatever. We're there.
That's awesome. Brandon, my friend, always a treat to talk with you. Thank you for peeling back the curtain a little bit on your life story, on you going through the financial journey, the hiccups, the patterns that you've developed, and opening with that habits versus event piece. I appreciate you, and I know listeners will have appreciated this discussion as well. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
And we will see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.